Welcome to Support is Sexy, episode 138, with Wanona Satcher, founder and CEO of Rejuve. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here because it would not be the same without you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest today. Wonderful woman, wonderful designer, really doing something to impact all of our communities. Her name is Wanona Satcher, and Wanona is the CEO and founder of Rejuve, which is a nonprofit dedicated to developing what she calls prosilient communities, and you'll find out what that means in this episode. What I love about Wanona's story is there's a lot of things, but one of the main things is I talk a lot about the importance of safe spaces, especially for me, safe spaces to share our stories. Wanona talks about safe spaces in respect to architecture, design, community development, urban communities. I love what she says about being able to create space for serendipitous opportunities, and you'll hear more about that in this podcast. So I know you're going to enjoy this. And what you'll learn on this episode from Wanona is how to create equity of spaces, also why she believes there are really no new ideas, which is very interesting, the difference between prosilient and resilient communities, the benefits and the bureaucracy of working within local government, how to know when it's time to walk away, and why it's important not to burn bridges, why it's important for women to have side hustles, we second that notion, why you must get rest and the power of meditation, how to lean in your own way, Wanona's top tips for fundraising, and she talks about fundraising on a platform that I love and will be using very soon called ifundwomen.com. So be sure to listen out for that because I know you're going to want to support Wanona because support is sexy. Wanona also talks about there's nothing sexier than saying, quote unquote, I don't know, and asking questions, and how to recognize the right opportunities and know when to say no. So again, I know you're going to love this episode. Wanona is doing such great work, and I love the fact that she's so innovative, introducing she says there's no new ideas, but new concepts or innovative ways to create spaces for us all to thrive in. And to get in touch with Wanona and view the resources that she mentions in this episode, go to supportissexypodcast.com, search Wanona, Wanona. You'll see all of her information here, information on how to support her I Fund Women campaign so we can help her raise the money that she needs to move forward. Supportissexypodcast.com. All right, without further ado, Wanona Satcher. So Wanona, thank you so much for being here for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
Same here. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm excited to share my story on Support is Sexy.
Excellent. So when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably when I was a kid. Of course, when you're young, you don't typically are able to articulate that that's what entrepreneurship is. Mm-hmm. But I had always been in roles and through school, grade school and high school, when it comes to leadership positions and clubs. Also, my family started me out very, very young at age 6 in volunteering roles in soup kitchens and homeless shelters. And I think accumulation of all of that and always wanting to have a voice and making sure that I had a voice as well as others had a voice, even into college. When I look back on it now, it's a really good, I think, example of the kind of skills starting off young that you want to pursue. And the best way to do that is through entrepreneurship. So I would say just those what seem to be very simple situations as you're younger turned out to be very important skills as an entrepreneur. I would say from more of a fun kind of literal sense, I used to sell candy out of a laundry bag in my locker at high school on the bus. It was something that was so simple and made so much sense. Like, hey, I can actually make a couple of bucks on the side and provide a service that everybody likes, including the principal, who really kind of pulled me aside. So you're not typically supposed to do this, but if you have any more of those suckers, let me know. And so it became one of those things where it's like, hey, I can actually use food or some kind of product to attract individuals into my circle of what I can offer. And that kind of attitude, which is again, simple on one as an onset, but it really makes a lot of sense to how I approach life now, which is to focus my attention on simplicity and practical applications of ideas for as a business model. So I would say skills, and then there are some instances like selling candy on the bus or in school that kind of have culminated into what I do now as an entrepreneur.
Excellent. Now, you were born and raised in Atlanta, right?
That's correct.
What was Wanona like as a little girl?
Wanona was interesting. She was very thoughtful and geeky. She definitely did not follow the status quo of how people typically design being a girl. I mean, I could not stand playing with dolls. I thought that was the most ridiculous thing in the world as far as a toy. Definitely not interactive for me. It took too much of my time and imagination to put an effort into understanding the point of a doll. And so the dolls that I did receive, I used as speed bumps for my hours and hours on the floor as what at that point I didn't know was a future builder. So I would build cities literally in neighborhoods out of crayons, and I love cars and toy trucks. And build streets and buildings. And at that time, didn't know that's what I was doing. But for some reason, I was so, I loved doing the building piece of putting things together and seeing how systems work. Now, I remember my grandmother used to ask me, what are you thinking about all these hours on the floor? I really didn't know what I was thinking of. And now that I look back, I think that definitely was a big push into or story into what I do now. And I think that, my family, one of the things they did not do was to hinder me from taking up the entire living room floor for hours. They promoted and encouraged my exploration. So I was very explorative. I took a lot of science, extra science courses, because I was fascinated with, again, how things are connected at small levels and large levels, and how things are built and evolve over time. And so I loved reading. My mom worked in the library system for years. My grandmother, every time I turned around, she was studying something. My family unit encouraged me to always ask questions and always be vocal about what my needs are, who I am, and to always love myself. The few dolls I did have, and the coloring books and the art materials were always promoting loving who I was as a young Black girl, especially growing up in a typical racial system, whether in grade school, in high school, and in college. And so I had a lot of love when it came to refocusing my priorities as an future African-American woman to give back to not just my community, but the community at whole. And how can I do that? I grew up in a single-parent household, although it didn't feel like it because I was around my grandparents and my aunt, my mom, uncles, however, I think that did give me a sense of empathy that is, I believe, required for successful entrepreneurship. So I had a very diverse childhood, growing up with a lot of different types of people, different ethnicities. I loved it, and so glad that I was able to take part in learning from so many different types of people. Those skills are valuable when you are talking about entrepreneurship and support. So I really did have a very educational and explorative upbringing. I was a fan of horror movies. I could not stand chick films, as they call them. I saw no purpose of that. I was just very dry. I had a very dry sense of humor. But I felt like I could talk to anybody. I was definitely very introverted, and so I've had to kind of learn how to. I would say entrepreneurship helps you with balancing extroversion and introversion a little bit better. But very fascinated in science, and then by the time I hit probably 5th or 6th grade, I started showing an affinity to architecture, and so my parents fed that hunger and with different types of sketching equipment and tools and toys, books, architecture books. So it was kind of a self-led process that was encouraged by my family.
What is it that you think you loved about design?
Design, specifically what I do in landscape architecture and urban design. So basically, I design cities. Design is one of those, I think, languages that's interesting, right? So, they always say that math is the universal language. And I think design is universal, but what's cool about it is it means different things to different people. And it's very powerful because of how people relate to their environment. And as a designer, you basically have the opportunity to determine how people relate to their environment, which can be a huge negative and be very political. And I think it's definitely underrated when it comes to investing, because typically you see venture capital and angel investing with widgets and technology and apps, which is great. What I'm interested in is looking at before the tech. How do we invest in designing and developing communities for equity? And I know that we all know that we have senses that help us to understand what our relationship is to the larger environment and to each other, and design plays an important role in either expanding that conversation or degrading it. And so I really think it's important that the study of how we value a relationship to our environment, and not just design as far as sketching and designing very broad master plan communities, but designing specifically relationships in those spaces. And I call it that the work that I do is interested in designing spaces for purposeful serendipity, right? So programming spaces, purposefully programming spaces to allow and to engage and promote and encourage democratization of innovation of ideas, lessening of biases, so that then people become empowered themselves. So for me, design is very inspirational, and it provides freedom of choice, which is very integral to how we grow as a community, and how we also collaborate with other communities as well.
How do you structure a space to make it be more serendipitous? Are there things that is it in the approach of how you create it, or is it creating spaces where people can sort of run into each other, so to speak, or how does that work?
It's both, but I think at the very core, which a lot of designers unfortunately don't do, is the engagement space. So community engagement and civic engagement is key to understanding the current sociological aspects and psychological aspects of space, and then taking the history and the current analysis of those sites, building off of that to then develop and design proactive, what I call prosilient communities. So right now there's a big trend in resilient communities, putting philanthropic dollars to developing and designing spaces that respond to past superstorms, really bad climatic changes in our environment. What my interest is in paying attention to intersection of people, space, how they relate to their environments in the past and the present, and settlement patterns, and then how that provides enough information to make more important decisions going forward, so that our spaces are more flexible and adaptive. Whether that's talking about making spaces more walkable, whether that's talking about repurposing or recycling, which is what my business is trying to do right now, materials, and then incorporating park systems, incorporating spaces that speak to who we are and what we are about. As an example, Central Park in New York really is not just a park. It truly, and landscape architecture history shows this, that these green spaces are truly sociological spaces that kind of democratize people, right? So not everybody obviously can live on Fifth Avenue, but everybody can inhabit a space and kind of be at the same level at the same time. So it's a way to bridge gaps. It's a way what design is a way to restitch a lot of the different urban fabric, what I call restitching the urban fabric, where a lot of our urban highways have cut and dissected communities, specifically communities of color. Design is a way to re-inhabit spaces, but smartly. So that's kind of a little bit about what I do now.
Now your company is called Rejuve, right?
Yes.
Rejuve, and it, as you just mentioned, it's really about designing prosilient instead of resilient communities. But what does that mean exactly when you take that approach to the things that you do? What does it mean to have a prosilient community?
So Rejuve is short for rejuvenation, and so the idea is that there's really not a new idea, and not a new space. It's so taking current spaces, current places, current blighted properties, and reinstituting equity in those spaces. Understanding how people respond to current events, current challenges, whether it's poverty, whether it's lack of access to healthy, affordable foods, and then applying techniques that can provide either putting resources back into that space or designing new spaces. For instance, I'm working with shipping containers as a tool to provide affordable housing in a way that encourages equity and affordability and perpetuity. So it's looking at policy issues that we have dealt with in the past and looking at how they've affected our communities today, using that plus civic engagement of understanding people's needs and then applying that as part of the design strategy versus just saying, hey, there's a blighted property, let's make a really great design. So it literally is taking the narrative of that place and using that to help solve key global issues. And so in the past, it's been more theory, but we know now that you can actually qualitatively and quantitatively measure outcomes of that. So it's designing smartly, it's designing for the people, but it's designing with people in mind. Typically, we design for people after the fact. And what I'd like to do is have the residents and citizens as not only my clients, but as my collaborators to say, hey, these are our needs. How does design answer that problem in a way that's practical and efficient as far as taxpayer dollars?
Right. Now, Rejuve is not or maybe it is, you tell me, an architecture firm or a design firm. Is it considered a nonprofit that is also an architecture and design firm, or how do you have it set up?
Yeah, so it's kind of rare, right? So Rejuve right now is a charitable 501c3 organization, and it is a professional design organization right now that's focusing on urban design, landscape architecture, economic development, and public policy. I am currently working with my attorneys to establish a B Corp for-profit arm, which will deal only with more real estate development and design to feed into and subsidize some of the work that we're doing in Rejuve. So Rejuve holistically, yes, is a design professional, which is rare to have a design firm as a nonprofit.
Right.
You typically don't see that, but we are designers for social good. So that is the key component to our strategy for designing prosilient communities that are adaptive and flexible to the people's needs, but also balance equity, incorporate equity as well. So it's a design professional organization that is evolving into local manufacturing as part of the design process.
What made you decide to set it up as a nonprofit from the beginning? Even though I know you're doing some things to have other parts of the business develop now, but what was the first thought?
Right. So really the first thought was, well, there's two. So there's the ability to promote and market the organization as a social good company, which is, pretty easy when an organization is a charitable organization, a 501c3 nonprofit. The other piece is funding. So I mentioned earlier that, it's hard, and it's been hard for me as an entrepreneur of a nonprofit, specifically in design, to go after typical entrepreneurial for-profit funding. So venture capital, angel investment really does not touch on social impact organizations. Now, impact investing is starting to grow a little, but the return on investment for the kind of work that I do is longer than building a particular product. So being able to apply for grants, being able to partner with other philanthropic organizations and community development corporations, which are typically nonprofit, those were really the determining factor for why, and having also private donors invest in what we're doing. Those are the main reasons why that it's a 501c3.
Now, you attended Auburn University College,
Yes.
right? Yes.
Yes.
And you studied architecture, design, and construction, and then got a master's in landscape architecture and city planning.
That's correct.
You're fascinating. Wonderful credentials there. Did you know, though, when you graduated for school, or did you have a plan, I should say, at that time to go into your own business and then setting up a nonprofit and that kind of thing? What was your vision for yourself at that time?
Yeah, totally not. I would never have guessed I would be at this point at all. I, like a lot of, in the majority of design students globally, typically you go to design school and then you get a job at a firm. So that's what I did. So that was my private sector. That was my private sector opportunity, and that started to kind of tell me a little bit about, okay, now I'm actually practicing what I've learned. That's kind of cool, but it doesn't touch on the community. So, you're there and you're putting projects through permitting, you're designing a little bit, you're learning a little bit, you're trying to prepare for your licensing exam, which is important, but it didn't have the people piece of what I had learned at Auburn, and the people part of me that I was so used to being a part of as a young kid, volunteering in various organizations. So after the private sector, I started another company, design consulting company in North Carolina, and then worked for another firm. And through all of those things, started to learn more and more about the community, and also learn more and more about local government, which is rare for a designer from the perspective of being an active participant. And so I then worked for local government, which was a huge difference than working for the private sector, in a lot of different ways, but very valuable to help me create a language of balancing top-down policy with grassroots civic design.
So tell us about working in local government. What was that experience like for you?
Very difficult. Local government, unfortunately, and government in general, is not really a design-oriented space, and it definitely isn't necessarily an entrepreneurial space. But the civic aspect of it is crucial to working for people, right? And so understanding the political system is important when you're talking about designing for affordable housing, you're talking about designing entrepreneurial spaces, when you're talking about applying land trusts and zoning. So it would behoove any designer who wants to be successful, especially to be an entrepreneur as a designer, to learn more about how the political system works, because then you can make better and more efficient design solutions. However, government typically is very, like I said, non-creative, and so that was a situation where it's hard to succeed when you have new ideas that have not been tested for 20, 30 years. The status quo and challenging the status quo, which is what entrepreneurship is really all about, is definitely not. It's definitely not looked upon as something that's positive, unfortunately. I think there are a lot of local governments that are trying to change that. And they realize that it's getting more and more important to work with the private sector, work with designers. They call it design thinking in the entrepreneurial world. Understand the qualitative aspects of policy making, not just the quantitative metrics of what you're doing. So it was very difficult, and it was also difficult to have new ideas as a young Black female professional in that space, because typically males were department heads, or they were department heads of services and departments that were about quality of life. And so, when we don't have the diversity within departments that deal with the quality of life, that's very problematic, right? Because it's not all encompassing of the people, the constituencies that we're supposed to be working for.
Right.
So government really is not the best, at least for me, was not the best R&D, but it was the best space to understand how politics work and how people are not as creative as you think. And it also helped me to realize that I can do those jobs and do it well. We're often told that, as a woman, certain things are too challenging, or as an African American are too challenging. You'd never reach that point. And when I saw how people govern or lack thereof, it's like, wow, very eye-opening. Well, I can do that. I can influence policy this way. All I need to do is meet with the people first. And so it became a situation, it was interesting, where the community was so excited about the work that I was doing as far as community engagement. And they really were my backbone for my tenure as a city employee. However, because I was very vocal and very out there with my ideas, which they loved, it put a burden on department heads and staff who had not really done a lot of work, but were being paid by taxpayer dollars. So people saw me as a risk. In fact, I was told by upper management within the local government that I need to stay in my lane, and that you're too risky. And, you know, the fact that you are answering questions of citizens, but they're not asking us is a problem, even though I have the same credentials. So it was very rough. And, you know.
How do you handle a situation like that? In your situation, you were in local government, but just in general, where you're basically told, as you said, to stay in your lane when the work you're doing is all about coming up with new ideas. It's not like, you know, you're creating something that this is the way you build this certain thing and that's it. It should be, or you would think, an environment where ideas are wanted and celebrated. So how did you handle that time?
Originally, I went back to my original purpose, which was to use design as a tool to bridge gaps and to design a strategy, a community engagement strategy that put the community first. And they became my voice. They could speak louder than me because they didn't work for the government, but we worked for them. And so they ended up becoming the, if you will, co-captains and co-authors of my ideas to implement their way. And so my work became 120% community-driven, community-led. And it influenced, I believe, local policies in transportation, in land use, where they had a broader voice and I would say louder voice to the political space, which was very helpful without my necessarily being the person up front. So I learned that the strategy and the tactic of being very specific in community organizing, I would never thought I would have been a community organizer, but it does take experience and it does take work. And it does take being able to be empathetic to different people with different issues because everybody thinks their problems are priority. The other thing that I did was become very vocal about the issues of gender and race in that kind of space. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I was retaliated against, but I was always raised to have a voice and raised believing that, government should be a space that encourages questions and encourages voice whether people agree or not. So that voice became a problem because I wasn't complacent and my work is too dynamic to remain quiet. And so it went from being community-driven processes that I designed to having a lot of health and anxiety issues over the fact that this was a system I could not crack. And so I ended up walking away and resigning, which was a very difficult position because especially for entrepreneurs and women, you don't typically walk away from a problem. You see problems as opportunities. And my aunt told me, she said, you were raised to make a difference and leave an impact, but sometimes it's okay to walk away. Sometimes you're not going to change those systems that are so deeply embedded with hatred that you walk away and you start somewhere else, but you leave your impact. So that's what I had to do, and physically move to somewhere else. And I encourage that of women, especially young women, that it's okay to walk away and to end relationships that are very toxic.
Right. And to not give, I think what your aunt said is it's about being focused on the impact that you want to have. So even if it's not in that space or you've done what you can in that space, then to your point, moving on somewhere else where you can still stick to the mission and vision of what you're trying to create and do. It doesn't end with that end of that relationship.
That's correct. And, to do your job well. Mm-hmm. So no matter what anyone thinks of me, again, and it's always my space was the community. That's where I resonated. So at the end of the day, no one can say that I did not do great work. Right. And the work that I did was impactful, where people still email me to this day from North Carolina about work that I've done, how I can connect them. I was a serial connector, people from all walks of life. Do you need recommendations? That's the kind of impact you want to leave no matter what the situation is. And you don't want to burn bridges, which is difficult not to do. Right. But that was in the back of my, I thought that was in the back of my mind, like, okay, I'm walking away, but I still might need help, and support from some of the political space. So yes, it's important to walk away, but be careful and be strategic about how you transition from one relationship to the next.
Yes, I think strategic too, in the way, just what you said about not burning bridges. So looking at, well, what was good about this, or what might be in this space that I might be able to utilize moving forward, if not these specific people, or certainly not these policies that are so restrictive, but there might be contacts or whatever it is there, and certainly the experience you take with you. I always try to remind people of that. Sometimes we think, oh, we're leaving this thing and I'm going to, lose all the experience that I have. No, that goes with you, right?
Exactly. Oh, definitely. And if you've done your job well, it will. And you leverage those, and you realize too that again, there's nothing new. So there's variations, but working with other local governments, it's the same beast, right? So it behooves you to be as prepared as possible and to learn from those kinds of challenges, and again, use those challenges as opportunities to better inform communities, to make better design decisions, and also to ask better questions to get better answers.
Now, when you moved, that was in North Carolina, right?
Yes, that's correct.
When you moved, did you move to Atlanta at that point, or back, I should say, to Atlanta at that point, or what was your next move after you left there? Or did you know at that time what your next move would be?
I started realizing what my next move was going to be, which was back home to Atlanta. I hadn't been home in a long time, which in and of itself is another, I think, opportunity more young women should take. To get out of your comfort zone. Entrepreneurship is all about being uncomfortable. So you have to be prepared for taking risks and being okay with that. So it just felt good to be home, and it's hard to explain. But home is where all of this started. But you're coming back smarter and more mature, and with the opportunity that you've learned so much. Now, how can I creatively apply what I've learned to a place that's more welcoming of ideas?
And was that at the point that you decided to start your own business?
Yes. Actually, I had started my business while I was still working for local government.
Okay.
So basically I would work my regular 9 to 5 job, and then, or 8 to 4:30 job, and then come home and work on my business. I believe it is important for people, especially women, to have those side hustles, because it refocuses your passion, and you start realizing, wait a minute, I'm actually good at this. I can do this. It's okay to not be in a comfortable 8 to 4:30 job. Like I can actually be an entrepreneur. And so I had already started a business. In fact, they couldn't stand the fact that I started my own business, even though it had nothing to do with what I was doing at the job. And they tried to audit me like 3 or 4 times to suggest otherwise. So that propelled me even more to say, okay, it's time to make my own decisions.
Time to make that move.
Yeah. So, and I think the other thing too was literally the day after I turned in my letter of resignation, I had a day off, and I spoke on a panel at MoFest, which is an internationally known music and technology conference. The first year was in North Carolina there. And, I spoke about the future of cities on this amazing panel, and the people in the audience were roboticists, were musicians, were attorneys, were entrepreneurs. I mean, the creative spirit in that place was so overwhelming, and it was like a right on time epiphany. Like, I'm actually doing what I should be doing. So it was very stressful to resign from something that you thought that you thought you can really make a difference. To all of a sudden getting this jolt, like, no, you need to make this change. And so we have to listen to those hints and those little fairies that talk to us in our ear and give us these pictures into what the rest of our lives could be if we follow our passion. And so it was almost like a validation that I was on the right path. So and then that was the Thursday, and then Friday I went back to work to clean out my stuff, and people at work were like, "We saw you on TV," and I was like, "TV? What are you talking about? You spoke here." I was like, "Darn, I can't get away from it." So they saw what they were losing, basically.
Wow. Oh, so the panel that you were on was on television there.
Yes, that's right. Wow,
look at that. And now, so what year was that when you made that move?
So this was all 2016. It was recent. I had been working for the city since 2011. And what a whirlwind of projects and people that I met. And then it started getting worse and worse. Pretty much in 2014, when I realized that the reason I was hired was to save a department, not to mentor me professionally and personally. So I began to notice, and things that the more things started making sense, and that's when in 2016 I said I can't do it anymore.
So what has it been like then since you left that position, and not so much about the position, but more so of starting your own thing, of doing all the things that you have sort of on your agenda for what you want to create? What has this time been like between then and today?
It's interesting, Elayne, because I realized that rest is important. And transitions are important. Sometimes transitions are probably more important than actually being at a certain point in your life. So as much as I panicked making that move, even though I was moving home, but realizing that, okay, I have no more health insurance, coverage the way I did, or, to get to you're used to getting up and putting your clothes on, putting your makeup on or whatever and going to work. Now I don't have to do that. Now I actually have to manage my time.
Right.
It's rewarding, but I also noticed that I was suffering from some major anxiety issues because of that hostile environment that I didn't even know I was suffering. And so it's important for people, especially women, they say make room for baby. I say make room for yourself, to take time to meditate and rest your mind, to be ready, to be prepared for the next thing. It's okay to do that. And so this transitional piece has allowed me to rest and to reflect on everything that's happened, what lessons, what I've learned, and to meet people who can now help me in new relationships move to the next level. So it's all about letting go of past relationships and old relationships, and women sometimes have a hard time doing that. And saying it's okay to let those relationships go, and to also open new doors and find new doors. But it's hard to do that when you are working 9 to 5. Like, it's hard to be able to go out and meet people, go to meetings, network when you have to answer a weekly report, or or answer an institution that doesn't align with your values and the work and the impact that you want to create. So it's a risk, but it's a healthy risk. And my mom and I have this conversation. I asked her, I said, Mom, she's been working all her life, and I'm trying to promote her to be an entrepreneur. And I said, Mom, think about this. Is it more risky to wonder every morning if your key is going to open that door when you get to work, or is it more risky to wake up whenever you want to wake up, set your own schedule, and know that you now are empowered to run your life the way you see fit? I would not turn back the hands of time for anything. I think entrepreneurship is the way to go. I think it is so selfless, but it's also so it's such an evolutionary and maturation process to really be confident in the fact that you know what you're doing.
I love it. Do you also think, too, it's important for women to know in the letting go, as you mentioned, or the moving forward or clearing the blocks of whatever it is, that it's not only okay, but important to also get support through that process, and whatever that support looks like, whether it's talking to a professional or a spiritual advisor or family or whatever it is? Because I think, and I ask that because I think I'm guilty of this too. Sometimes I think, well, I'm going to go through it and figure it out and fix it, and then I'll share it. And of course, you want to share in safe spaces, but sometimes in bringing in people who could be helpful to you through that process could make it an easier transition. Sometimes we make it harder than it needs to be, right?
Oh, definitely. And we overthink, and I'm practicing to stop doing that. But yeah, you've got to in your resting period, and that's the one thing about meditation I like, is that it's really all about asking questions and asking very thoughtful questions to find that support that you need, and being very strategic of what kind of support that you need as well. I mean, everybody's not for you, and every door is not for you to walk through. But that's been huge. I mean, I could not have done this without a support system, and I could not have done this without being taught to ask for help, to know that I don't know everything, which is a key skill for an entrepreneur and a leader, to be okay with not knowing everything. And you find out that, hey, my anxiety attacks are nothing new. I mean, how many people have the same problem? And when you meet those individuals or meet people that have been there, done that, they can offer you advice, and you'll be pleased to find out how many people love for someone to ask to help me.
Right.
because then they know that they can help and they know how to make a difference. So also financial support. So finding that support system where someone can provide you with $100 here or $1,000 there that can send you to collaborative camps or lectures or things that can personally and professionally help you, so that when you get to a point of now applying and becoming an entrepreneur, you can be more efficient. So mental support and financial support and physical support is also key. So exercising, getting some drinking more water, all those things are critical in a positive transition process.
So important. Those are great tips. I think especially all of it, but also, as you mentioned, the financial piece. Sometimes we're thinking that, I have to get the $1 million investment, or I think people are sort of getting out of that now. But even the $100,000 investment is sort of, how can you get small support along the way in doing things that'll help move you forward.
Right. That's correct.
Excellent. Now tell us about this plugins project that you're working on with Rejuve, and I'm calling it plugins. I'm sure it's much more sophisticated than that, but tell us what that is and what your vision is for that.
Yeah, really excited. So plugin pods, I'm kind of starting a second career, but expanding my design ideas and strategies. And the idea is to repurpose shipping containers as really cool, affordable housing and creative entrepreneurial spaces. That's one phase of it. The second phase is to then acquire and work with investors, blighted properties in inner cities, where we can overlay a land trust model so the properties maintain affordability and perpetuity, as well as the structure itself. And the other notion, too, is this job creation. So the big vision is to eradicate poverty, and poverty is very multidimensional. Unfortunately, we try to solve multidimensional problems with one-dimensional solutions, and it does not work that way. So looking at how everything starts at home. So providing spaces for women, families, children, where they can live, work, educate, thrive, and grow in the place that they are from without being displaced. And so you can have a container home on the same lot as a container business, and thrive where you are, and provide to the tax base and provide your voice to the community without being essentially displaced by market trends of real estate values increasing. So it's trying to look at, again, going back to that relationship idea, a theory of looking at how people relate to their spaces, and then taking that knowledge and applying that to design and to local manufacturing. Right now we have about 760,000 plus containers just sitting on our ports doing nothing.
These shipping containers.
And I'm not the only one with this idea. People are looking into shipping containers and tiny homes, but mine is more a systemic solution of land use and job creation and housing and public policy all in one. Luckily, I was fortunate to meet Karen Kahn, who you had on your podcast or earlier podcast.
Yes.
She's amazing, and started I Fund Women, which is a crowdfunding platform to support women-owned businesses and ventures. She loved the idea, and I became part of the beta group to develop and host a crowdfunding campaign, which is still up now, to develop this idea and to actually take idea from lab to the physical environment. So I'm raising $20,000. I'm halfway there. I think it's 10,100, I believe. That's there now. And the $20,000 will go to building a beta affordable home using a container, and on a lot in Atlanta, Georgia. I've gotten some excitement from some local city councilmen there, as well as from, of course, I Fund Women followers, and other innovators in general who think this is a great model that can be replicated globally, and that really can put a dent into how we see revitalizing our inner cities. So that's where we are right now, and I don't have that much time, but hopefully I can get to the 20,000.
You're going to get to the 20,000. We're going to put that out there. I want to tell people where to find that, the campaign. But before you do, tell us, with the shipping containers, how do you envision it working? Is it that someone would, in the community, would be able to buy a shipping container as if it's a home, but it'll already be outfit it as a home, or how does it work? How does that concept work?
Right. So for the nonprofit, the idea is to do a couple of things. So one, provide a space that is completely designed in partnership with housing authorities and other community organizations who've already done the work of understanding what the needs are in the community and finding families, locating families who need home housing, specifically in those geographies, in those neighborhoods, and then moving them into one of these pods on the blighted lot. The other idea is to also rent out completely designed spaces for either the housing or small businesses, and those rents either go back to local nonprofit organization that can do those transactions, or to a homeowner on a lot. So some of these pods might even be granny flats where you have a homeowner who is a senior living in a community where seniors are being displaced, but they want to stay there. And so we can provide a pod for a container home for a millennial to live on their lot to pay them rent, so that, the millennial can also be downtown, but that senior can now take care of their properties and stay in the community where they were born and raised. So that's the idea, that these are affordable units to purchase or rent for housing or small business spaces. Not just small business spaces, but also clinics and entertainment venues as well.
Right. Now, how big are the shipping containers usually? Does it vary?
It does. So typically you have either 20-foot shipping containers or 40. So 20-footers are about 320 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at a typical studio apartment, that's not too far from that.
Right.
The thing about containers is that they're extraordinarily sturdy structurally. And so you can stack them, you can add 2 to 2 together. You can do quite a bit with some elbow grease and some knowledge about construction to make them fit whatever the needs are. I've had conversations with University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Kenan Institute for Private Enterprise in North Carolina about using these pods, not necessarily for housing, but as OBGYN or oncology clinics for those communities in need that need access to health care. So you can upfit them any way that you want to, through electronically or mechanically to fit that space. But 320 square feet is small, depending on who you are. But we're looking to target, even though I hate that word, but to get my point across, to target millennials and seniors living in urban areas.
I love it. So tell people then, now that we know more about the what the idea is behind it, tell people where they can find out more about your campaign and go to support. So everyone listening, be sure to go right away when you hear this episode, go to support Wanona's campaign. But tell us on iFundWomen.
Yes, please support. So to donate and learn more and to watch my video, go to ifundwomen.com. Click on projects and then find plug-in pods, and you'll see my project there. And you can learn more about not only the project, but the amazing rewards where I've partnered with other women entrepreneurs to provide rewards to my donors as a big thank you. And you can also sign up for a newsletter that I'll try to send out as much as I can to thank donors and to remind donors of what they are investing in and ideas other people are doing similar globally. So I would love everyone's support and shares. I would love everyone to contact their corporate friends for their giving programs to help fund the rest of the goal.
Excellent. And for everyone listening, I'll have a link directly to Wanona's project, but I wanted you to be able to say it so people can hear it during the podcast. And what would you say the biggest lesson you've learned from this experience of raising money or doing a fundraising campaign for your project?
Yeah, it's hard because, again, I'm such an introvert still. I get headaches from just thinking, I had to go to a meeting and a network. But it's so, again, that goes back to all these years of volunteering and service and working for local government, where I had to put myself out there to be able to speak to so many different individuals with different priorities and to come to a way to bridge the gap as much as I can. And so those lessons have been critical in, number one, knowing that it's okay and very sexy to ask for financial support.
That's right.
Number two, if someone doesn't tell you to stop asking, to keep asking. Number three, it's okay to find the presidents and CEOs of organizations versus middle management because you want a direct answer and you want to meet someone that can speak on behalf of that organization. Also, to be very careful to make sure that, yes, we need resources. Yes, I need funding, but desperation is not sexy. So don't go after funding that does not align with your impact that you want to create. Be very strategic and very serious about who you're asking for funding and resources. And resources can also include technical services. So one of the things that I've learned through this I Fund Women crowdfunding and just fundraising in general, working with other nonprofits in the past, is to be strategic in what you're asking for. And sometimes it's not funding, it's can you be a mentor? Mm-hmm. And people will respond quicker to advising you sometimes than funding, because again, what I'm doing specifically is so not typical. It's so atypical of what funders give money to. So I've had to tweak my narrative to show the impact and the high return on investing in community development early on and design as something that's very important, not just something that's really aesthetically pleasing. So those are some of the things that I've learned. I think the most important thing out of all of this is, Elayne, I like a lot of women read the book Lean In. I still have the book. Lean In is not as easy as people think when you are up against gender and racial discrimination.
I think Sheryl Sandberg has finally mentioned that too.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, it's not. And so it's hard to lean in when you're not even in the room to be at the table. So what I've learned and what I tell people, women and young women, is that when that happens, it's okay. So, find a folding chair, open that chair, sit in front of the door and take notes, put a cup to your ear, listen in, take notes, and then build your own table. And, that's right. And then let that be the table for other people and other women to do more. So support is sexy. Yes. Remembering that it's not all about you, that a successful entrepreneur balances empathy with practical application, and to just get out of lab and do it. That's what entrepreneurship is all about.
I love it. Have you ever read the book Quiet by Susan Cain?
I have not.
Got to read that. As an introvert, it's one of the books that really made me see. One, I said, oh, okay, now I understand what it is to be an introvert, or that there are so many other people, quote unquote, successful people who are introverts, and just how it's about managing your energy in different ways, or that we receive energy in different ways. Because like you said about networking and those kind of things, I have to get my mind right for those kind of things. Yeah. So it's sort of like, that's right. Okay, get your energy up, and then afterwards you're sometimes fully exhausted, whereas people who thrive on that are like, oh, I'm ready to go to the next thing, and you can't even imagine. So that's a book that I'll have to send you a link to that. Susan Cain, Quiet. I recommend that book.
Please do. And I was just writing a note while you were saying it. Yeah, it's great. Okay, awesome. I'll definitely check that out.
So what would you say, Wanona, entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
That's a great question. Well, it has taught me what I already was taught by the strong women in my family, which was, you know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. It reminded me that I'm intelligent. It reminded me that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's okay. It has taught me to be comfortable and being potentially being a what do you call it? A groundbreaker in the field of building, construction, manufacturing, and design, because nobody really does all of those things together from a social standpoint. It has taught me to be more comfortable with traveling on my own and experiencing new ideas, new spaces, new people. It has taught me to fundraise and to ask for money, because that is very uncomfortable, at least for me. So those are valuable skills. And the other thing I would say is taught me to ask questions still, like to say that I don't know, because there's nothing more sexy than saying I don't know, and you have this individual, whether it's a guy or a lady, just excited to help you get to your next step, and that would have never happened if You didn't say you didn't know or didn't ask. And the other thing too is it's also taught me to identify and notice when opportunities are even there. So often we get bogged down with day-to-day problems and challenges with ourselves and family and work that we miss opportunities that weren't really loud, but they were very important. So it's taught me to take a step back and prioritize, even reprioritize what I consider opportunities and what I don't, how to use my time wisely, and also how to say no. Like not to keep saying yes, not to keep paying money for all these different advisors, but to say no, that's not going to work. That's not worth my time, and I will charge you for that. So,
excellent. So, in closing, if you think over your life and career, and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be, and what would you say?
Wow, that's hard. There's so many people. I would say my mom, because, well, number one, she encouraged a wonderful relationship with myself and my grandmother, who was an amazing woman, who taught me a lot of about who I am and what I know now. My mom encouraged me to be weird in a way that it's okay to dress differently, to be differently, to have a voice, to ask questions, to be insightful. She encouraged that, and I believe she encouraged it more for me than herself, which a lot of mothers do. I never felt without anything. I always felt comforted, and she made sure that I had all the resources and all everything that I needed to be where I am right now. In fact, I'm living with her now. I had to move back home as we work on another house we're renovating in downtown Atlanta. So it's interesting to be back home at this juncture in my life, because now it's not just a mother and daughter relationship, it's a mother-friend relationship, which is a little different. So she has always been the kind of mother that said, if you got to move, go. It's not about my being close to you. You got to do what you got to do. But always know that I'm here for you, and never compromise having a voice as a woman, as a Black woman. It's just not that serious. So I would say my mother. I really would. And the fact that she was a single parent, so she was a mother and a father in one. She doesn't give herself enough credit. I continue to talk to her and give her the credit that I believe she deserves, which I don't ever think I could ever stop doing, because she deserves so much. But it would definitely be my mother. I would say that.
Excellent. Beautiful. Now tell us, what can we do to support you? Tell us again about the campaign and anything else that you want people to check out, website, social media. I will have links to everything, of course, but I want people to hear it.
Yeah. So please take a look and support and donate to my crowdfunding campaign on iFund Women. So it's ifundwomen.com. Click on projects and then click on plug-in pods, PLUGIN pods, PODS. I love your support. Really want to reach that $20,000 goal. It is a fixed goal, and maybe 20 more days, I think. I haven't looked at it, so it's soon. So please donate and share with your friends, networks, colleagues, corporate friends, family, followers, as well as please connect with me through social media. I'm always on social media. It's such an important tool. So my Twitter handle is @Wajisa, WAJISA. So is my Instagram. I have Rejuve 2, which is also my work Instagram site, and I'm on Snapchat as Nona, Nona. So please connect. Visit my website, www.wanonasatcher.com. And there I have links to my portfolio, more about me, some of the articles that I've presented, some of the videos, MoGFest, and when I did work with Bloomberg Philanthropies in New York. And of course, the video on the crowdfunding campaign is on there, and links to my business page as well as my contact information. So, and if you are in Atlanta, please email me for a cup of coffee. Always willing to meet, always willing to talk and invest, and let me know how I can help and support and promote other women businesses. I'm a serial connector. So again, it's not just about me. It's really about supporting other women, other people with dreams of making big impacts globally, and how sexy that is.
Excellent. I'm going to email you I want coffee. I'm in Atlanta.
Yay.
Yay. So what is, how do people go to your website to be able to contact you? WanonaSatcher.com if they want to get in touch with you. I know you said social media as well. What's best?
Yeah. So either one, But you can go to my website and kind of kill two birds with one stone, right? So you can look up more about me, kind of see where I'm coming from, more about my background, and it does have my contacts, my email and phone number is on there too, personal phone, a cell phone. So that's the best way to contact, because it has links to everything else, and it just saves a lot of time.
All right. So people, if you're in this space or interested in this space, make sure to reach out to Wanona. We only have good people listening to the podcast, so you can trust us. But make sure to reach out to her. When people say, I like to make sure we repeat that when people do say, I want to hear from people or reach out to me. Because sometimes I think people might want to reach out, but they're nervous. Yes. They don't know. So you've extended the invitation. I certainly accept. And hopefully some other people will accept. Wanona, thank you so much. You've been fantastic. You are fantastic. I love what you're doing, which is the reason I wanted to get you on here and to support your campaign sooner than later. So I'm going to try to get this up sooner than later so people can support. And thank you for sharing your story too, the personal parts of your journey and just the way you're making it happen today for yourself.
Oh, Elayne, well, I so appreciate what you're doing, and you're such just a beautiful individual, from not just your work, but your kind words. And thank you so much for supporting us, and let me know any way I can support you and promote your work. But thank you so much for helping me share my story today.
Absolutely. Now, before you go, you've given us great advice. What's a parting piece of advice, though, from you to our listeners about anything?
Parting piece of advice, besides carrying a folding chair with you everywhere you go, right. Is that some doors aren't meant for you to walk through, and opportunities are time sensitive. So, don't be discouraged when your first 3 or 4 or 5 knocks don't work. Either you're not knocking loud enough, or it's just not the right door. Most of the time, it's not the right door, right? So the simplest explanation tends to be the right one. Don't overthink it. But when you are presented with an open door, even if it's just cracked, you better walk through it, and you better take that as an opportunity, not a challenge. So those will be my parting pieces of advice that I'm still practicing, but that I do know works.
Excellent. Wanona, I appreciate you. Hold on just a second.
Yes. Thank you so much, Elayne.
You're welcome. All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Wanona. Such great information. And as I said before, I really love what she is creating in this world. So be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com, search Wanona, Wanona, so that you can find out more about her, more about the work she's doing, see how to get in touch with her, how to follow her on social media. She wants you to email her. So be in touch with her, tell you what you love about what she's doing, or if there are ways that you can help, volunteer, whatever it is, be sure to reach out, and make sure to support her I Fund Women campaign. Support is sexy. That's what we're all about. Funding is sexy. That's what we're all about. So be sure to support in whatever way you can, whether it's sharing the message, sharing the campaign, or donating or contributing, whatever you can. Also, while you're at supportissexypodcast.com, be sure to click the subscribe button at the top of the page so that you can subscribe to our email list and you won't miss any of our episodes. We don't send out any spam, only the good stuff. So be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com, click subscribe, and sign up for our email list, which will also give you access to our free mastermind. We have a Support is Sexy mastermind, smart women in there, giving information, sharing resources. You don't want to miss out. All right. So thank you as always for listening. And now you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.